Worldwide, trees have long been used as an indicator of a fertile, healthy ecosystem. In our own country, from the east coast to the west, Americans have measured the wealth and usefulness of the land at least in part by the forests around them. But the middle of our country was different. The lack of trees and the dry shadow of the Rocky Mountains resulted in the name Great American Desert by early explorers. To change that, from the late 1800s to the 1920s, forestry initiatives came and went with varying success on the plains grasslands. When the Dust Bowl swept many parts of the Plains states barren, it resulted in one of the most ambitious conservation tree projects ever attempted on the plains. The idea was that windbreaks, planted in areas from the Texas Panhandle north into the Dakotas, would protect lands from soil erosion. Like other plans before it, the Prairie States Forestry Project did not meet its very high goals. But today, remnants of the project remain as testaments to the widespread effort. By the program's close in the 1940s, more than 200 million trees were planted in more than 18,000 miles of windbreaks across the Plains states, laying the foundation of today's conservation tree programs. The most recent surge in conservation tree use came in the mid-1980s, when the Conservation Reserve Program was established to remove highly erodible land from agricultural production. Trees as part of buffers and planting for wildlife habitat have been key parts of the program's long-time success. But under this program, as with those before it, tree survival remained a key challenge in this arid region where grass reigned for most of history. The first lesson was the use of seedlings in establishment. Dry conditions and competition from weeds and grasses historically resulted in low survival rates when attempted to start trees from seed. Today, thousands of seedlings are sold in programs throughout the Great Plains. To give seedlings an added boost, fabric mulches, sometimes called weed barrier, were later developed. The material was designed to halt competition from weeds and grasses, at the same time holding moisture for seedling use during the first critical years of seed establishment. The method produced extraordinary results. Average seedling survival jumped above 80%, and compared to plantings not using fabric, trees were larger and healthier than their unprotected counterparts, resulting in healthy, vibrant conservation plots. But over time it became apparent that the new solution presented its own problems. Original estimates were that fabric would break down in about 5 years. But some fabrics remained largely unaffected by sun and weather 10 years or more. By that time, many trees, particularly evergreens, shaded the fabric, preventing further degradation. Meanwhile, trees grew enough to completely fill the holes originally provided for their survival. With each passing season, as tree caliper increases, so does the pressure on the trunk. Eventually, that girdling, or damage to the tree's ability to transport nutrients, can result in problems. One of the amazing things about trees is their adaptability and ability to overcome challenges. Many have seen tree bark grow over and around wire wrapped around a tree. This example shows that a tree changed its own growth to reduce the effects of outside influences. In the case of extreme girdling, however, the changes can result in drastic compromise of the tree's structural integrity. Here, the tree did its best to grow around a girdling fabric, but eventually the small amount of wood structure remaining was not enough to hold the tree up under its own weight, and it toppled over. To combat this risk and help assure the long-term health of conservation tree plantings, it's recommended the size of tree holes and barriers be enlarged when trees are around 5 years old. By that time, the tree should be well established, yet small enough to make the task easier. But as you'll see, the procedure can work on older trees as well. This video demonstrates two methods of releasing trees from the pressures of girdling. Each has advantages and disadvantages, but either should alleviate girdling concerns. The first is to cut several slits in the fabric outward from the trunk. Tools can vary, but two possibilities include those such as a brush hook or a sawed sickle attached to a long handle. Similar sharp-edged tools can be fabricated, and a long handle is suggested for ease of use. Hook the tip of the tool between the tree and the fabric. Then make 3 to 4 cuts about 12 inches long. By making this type of relief cut, the tree can still benefit from fabric cover, yet be released from binding pressure. It takes only a few seconds for one person to make the cuts. This segment shows the procedure is relatively easy even on larger trees. Two people working together can do a lot of trees in a short time. Each person makes 2 short cuts on each side of the tree, offering the relief the tree needs from girdling, but again leaving some barrier protection. For larger plots, there is a mechanized method that can provide relief for a large number of trees in a relatively short time. By pulling half the barrier completely away from the trees, binding pressure is relieved, and even though the other half of the barrier remains in place, it can be pushed away by the growing tree. To begin, cut the fabric and split it at the starting point. Wrap the loose end of the fabric to increase its strength. Then wrap a small chain around the fabric and attach it to a pull vehicle. A four-wheeler or other utility type vehicle works well because of its maneuverability. Once hooked up, pull steadily down the row, staying close to the tree row. Pre-cutting slits in the middle of the row ahead of the tearing fabric is a good way to help guide the tear. Without it, the tear can creep away from the center, making it less effective. A helper can walk ahead of the tearing fabric as shown here to make guiding cuts. Notice how the dirt holding the fabric rolls off as the fabric is pulled. If possible, wait until the area is relatively dry before using this method. The area shown here received about 1 inch of moisture 2 days before filming. Because this soil is sandy, the demonstration was successful, but it was apparent the extra moisture affected the pulls. As you've seen, long pulls are possible using this method, making it time effective. Even so, seams, branches on larger trees, and other factors can result in tears and starting over a lot. As you can imagine, the fabric piles up a little this way, but it really doesn't take long to load it up in your pickup for proper disposal. Like others before it, today's conservation tree program isn't perfect. But despite this new challenge, there's no argument to the program's success. Our highly erodible soil is more protected than ever. Habitat for wildlife is recovering, and our landscape is benefiting from the change. With our continued stewardship and efforts, the Great American Desert could be tomorrow's oasis on the plains.